Good morning and welcome to Conversations. I hope you have your coffee or whatever it is that you choose to get started in the morning. For me, it's always been coffee. So have a sip. Mmm, nothing like a good cup of coffee in the morning. Well, in case you don't know who I am Charlene Robinson. I am a mental health therapist as well as a board certified pastoral counselor and LCSA, which is a licensed certified substance abuse associate. And I'm here to converse about your mental health and to help erase the stigma. You see, my shirt says wellness, just to help erase the stigma of mental health. I'm creating a forum to, enable a safe space for people to listen and learn and share. Okay, you have to recognize that when you come to the end of yourself, that's when it's time to reach out. There's no shame in asking for help. The shame is when you don't ask. So your mental health matters. It matters just as much as your physical health. So let's talk. Today we're going to talk about time and change and seasons. Have a sip on that one. Yes. Coffee conversations, conversations. All right. Thank you. Let's get started. All right. So there's a hymn, and sometimes we have just thrown the hymns out, but there's a hymn. And it says, time is filled with swift transition. Naught of earth unmoved can stand. Build your hopes on things eternal and hold to God's unchanging hand. And then, just to bring it into the 20th century, I could be interpreted as roll with it, roll with it. That's the rap music, just to roll with it. And sometimes in this life, we have to learn how to flex. We have to learn how to deal with change. Time and change are constant. There's no way around it. And those are the two constants in life, time and change. An old Greek philosopher, Heraclitus, said, the only constant in life is change. Think about it. I know when I first started working at a job and everything was pretty routine. It was pretty cut and dry. I was working in HR and social services for the state. And, everything was pretty much, okay, somebody comes in, they fill out an application, you ask certain questions, you write it down, you document it, it's done. And then we had a staff meeting and things changed. And it was like everybody was just upset because things change. And you had learned early that as much as things change, they stay the same. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So we all face changes every day. You ever been driving down a highway, you got a nice little rhythm going on, you listen to your music, everything goes smooth, and then you see flashing lights ahead of you and the traffic starts to slow down. At that point right then and there, whatever was on your schedule has just been pushed back and it's going to change. And what can you do about it? Nothing. It's almost like you see a sign that says changes ahead because those flashing lights are telling you, oh yeah, you're going to have to slow down and you may be stuck in traffic for a little while. Anybody can relate? I know I can. All right. It could be a simple change in the weather. Our planned schedule may change or have to adapt, or the expected change in the seasons. Like right now, we're supposed to be in the season of spring, although I don't know about you or where you are, we're experiencing summer already. But change affects us all, and we all handle it differently, or not. Some people have a hard time adjusting to change, but it's going to happen regardless. There's a saying, I learned a long time ago, and this is what I had said already. As much as things change, they stay the same. Meaning some things that probably should change, don't. And then some things that don't change, they should have. So that's what that saying means. So change is constant, which means change happens continuously. I hear a lot of people say, I just want life to go back to normal. What? Well, what? Back to normal? What was normal? Okay, we weren't wearing masks. That's the only normal that I could see happening possibly in a distant future. But what in the handbasket is normal? I did a whole paper on that in my undergraduate wake up. All right, so the pandemic happened and we were forced to change. There was nobody asked us for permission. Nobody said, gave us a warning back in December and said, hey, heads up, you're going to be locked down by March. There was no warning. It happened. And what happened? We had to adjust, whether we liked it or not. In this thing called life, we have to learn how to flex. We have to be flexible. That old age dinosaur thinking is gone. Things are not really necessarily black or white. There's a whole lot of gray in between. Trust and believe. If you haven't found that out, keep living. You will. So what about time being a constant? Why? Well, it's the only process in the entire universe that can't be reversed. Let's say, okay, so you can change a procedure on a job. And then when that procedure doesn't work, you can go back to doing the way it was. Same thing when computers came along. If they crash, well, you can go back to using paper. With time, there's no going back. Think about that. I'm going to have a sip of coffee. We always say, if only I could turn back the hands of time, or if I could go back, this is what I would change some decisions, or if I knew then what I know now, blah, blah, blah. Okay, look at me. Whatever happened in the past, good, bad, or ugly, it is over. Move on. You can't change your past. You can't change time. We started at 11 o'clock. Can I go back to 11 o'clock? No. It's already after 11. The day is moving on. The sun is still moving. Actually, the earth is moving. The sun's still. All right. So time is relative. Some perceive that time is going slower for some people. And then it seems like the day just escapes us. It gets away from us. Well, it's the same 24 hours, same 60 minutes per hour. Okay. But it depends on how you're spending your time. What are you doing? Well, what does this all have to do with my mental health? Let me tell you, it has a lot. We need to have a good understanding about time and change in our daily lives. Once we do, a lot of the unnecessary stress that we put ourselves under, the importance of time and its seasons earlier in life, but it's never too late. We can always learn. I'm always trying to be a learner. I'm always researching. I'm always reading. I'm always just looking for different ways to do things. And I'm always curious. You have to keep your curiosity. I think after we leave childhood, our curiosity seems to just go. And that's not good. We need to keep it. Hang on to it. Speaking of seasons, the season of life transition naturally from one phase to another, as in nature, as a result of thought, values, and beliefs. And we have cultivated over a lifetime in our minds. Now, typically, summer season goes into autumn, autumn goes into winter, winter goes into spring. Now, typically, the world looks at it like this. All right, having some technical difficulties today. Everything wants to move around on me. Hold on. All right. Okay. So typically the world interprets seasons as this. The summer season brings happiness. The autumn fall season brings pain. I don't know how they figure that, but anyway. The winter season brings self-reflection. I can agree with that. And the spring season brings an opportunity for learning. I can agree with some of that. Climate, weather, and change of seasons affect much of what we do each day. Many people think they choose where they live based on climate. Weather can be both helpful and harmful. I know in the wintertime, a lot of people experience SAD, which is seasonal affective disorder. And what happens is there's not enough sunlight and people get depressed. All right. But depending on your perspective, as far as how the seasons affect you, but that's in the natural. Let's talk about how we interpret seasons in the spiritual. In the Christian life, we look at seasons differently. Ecclesiastes 3 says, "To everything there is a season and a time for every purpose. All things have their season, a time for every activity under the heaven." All right, so later on in the chapter, we're in Ecclesiastes 3, verse 8 through 11. I'm just going to read this. "A time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time for peace. What does the worker gain from his toil? I have seen the burden God has laid on men." Some things we bring on ourselves, though. And then verse 11b, "No one can find out the work that God does from beginning to end." You can ask God, well, what's going to happen tomorrow? And he may not necessarily say. Okay. And you can't predict what God is going to do. His ways are higher than our ways. Thank God. And his thoughts are higher than our thoughts. The Lord always works behind the scenes. Remember, our life has been predestined. He already knew the mistakes we were going to make. He already knew the downfalls we were going to do. And he has enough grace, hallelujah, and love to cover us. But we have to remember to come to him. Of course, we're strong people, in and of ourselves based on the way we were raised. But when it comes to accomplishing all that God has called us to do, you got to ask the Creator. All right. We have to remember that our lives have been predestined. God knew exactly the path we were going to take. He exactly knew. In Lois Evans' books, God bless her, Seasons of a Woman's Life, I got some of this from her book. The next few things I'm getting ready to say. Excellent book. If you haven't read it, read it. She indicates that there are 3 seasons. Our life seasons, as there's a season of seed planting, there's a season of growth, and then there's a season of harvest. The season of seed planting is when the Lord calls us to himself. All right, that's when we go through the whole process of salvation and baptism and receiving the Holy Spirit. The seasons of growth are those lessons we have learned in obedience, service, and preparation. I love the way she breaks this down. And then season of harvest, which is where most of us mature Christians should be, is when we are finally ready to step out into the primary responsibilities in which we have been prepared for. Some of us, our season is early in life, of the season of harvest. Some of us is later in life. That's what happened for me. Now is the season for us to step out in faith. Now is the time. We've had all this preparation all of our lives, however how long it was, 20, 30, 40 years, whatever. Now is the time to step out. Why not step out? Why just sit there and be fat and waiting with all this stuff that God has imparted to you and you're not using it? What are you doing? All right. Now, there's a quote by Martin Luther, which is in the beginning of Lois Evans' book, and it's, wow, it's really interesting. I'm going to read it for you. It says, "Never be afraid to trust an unknown future to an all-knowing God." That sentence right there was enough. He didn't have to say anything else. "He who believes in God is not careful for the morrow. which means you don't worry about tomorrow. It's all through scripture. All right. But labors joyfully and with a great heart. He must work and watch, yet never be anxious or careful, but commit all to him and live in serene tranquility with a quiet heart as one who sleeps safely and quietly. Wow, what wisdom. Wow. I read this, and I read it a few times, just to get it in my spirit. And I said, that's how we should be living life. When it says, yet never anxious. And so many people that I'm treating are just full of anxiety. It's like, breathe. You have to know that you got through some things in the past. You're going to get through this too. All right. Know this. Life is full of change, and time waits for no one. So when is time? Like I've mentioned before, when I went back to school, my mother was always telling me, go back to school, go back to school. And I was just like, yeah, okay. But I don't know what I want to go back to school for. That was my issue. And then when I realized what I wanted to go back to school for, I said, well, I got to wait for the right time. And it wasn't until one of the chaplains said, there is no right time. Just do it. And it was like the light bulb went off, and it's like, you know what? He's right. Preparation. It's all about preparation. Okay. So remember this. While you're busy making plans, life happens. You're not going to get around it. My calendar, I try to write most of the things ahead of time in pencil because I know it's subject to change. And 9 times out of 10 it does. Usually when I pen something and it's in the future, there's a 50% chance that it's going to change. And usually it does. All right. So you're going to have to learn how to flex with this thing called life. I flex all the time. All the time. There's things I plan to get done on a certain day, and it may happen and it may not. And if it doesn't, it's okay. Because there's another 24 hours in the next day. All right. Time is filled with swift transition. It is. Change can happen like that. The other day I was riding down the highway, all plans of going home, finish my paperwork, all of this. I got right 2 exits before I was to get off to go home and had a flat tire. I'm like, really? And it's 90 degrees outside. I'm like, oh, Lord have mercy. Time is filled with swift transition. Change is constant. Get used to that. And things will go, no, things probably won't go back to normal. Just get used to that idea as well. Okay? But know that you can have the abundant life that God promised you. Okay? You have to push for it. You have to step out in faith. You have to grab it with both hands and hold on to it, because there are going to be all kind of negative influences around you saying you can't do this. When I took my test and I didn't pass it, I was devastated. But then I remembered what God promised me back in the mountain in upstate New York. And he said, I called you to do biblical counseling. At that time, I had no clue what he was talking about. I'm like, okay, God, whatever. Okay, we're going to see. And, the more I tried to run from it, the more I came back to it. And I said, okay, this is it. So you have to grab hold of the promise of God, hold on with both hands, and go for it, because you may or may not have people to support you. You're going to have to go. You may have to step out and do it on your own, but do it. Just go. Just step out. If you step out into the deep where God says to step out, and he already told you to go, then go. When Peter said, God, I want to walk on water too. And Jesus said, come on. What did he do? He stepped out. He was fine as long as he kept his eyes on Jesus. As soon as he looked at those waves, that's when he sank. So we've got to stop looking at the waves of our circumstances and keep our eyes on Jesus and realize that time and change will adjust, and so will you. All right. Thank you for coming to Charversations. This is where it will be broadcast from now on. And I'm going to also put this on my YouTube channel. And I will see you next Saturday. God bless.